I'm Erik Shahoian. My passion for engineering and fabrication and for Porsches drove me to build two Porsche 907K continuation cars. The origin of the project was I was helping Dale Miller and Ron Gruner restoring 90803s, and I was reverse engineering titanium axles and making some difficult parts for them. And in speaking with Dale Miller, I found out that he had the blueprints and bodywork and some parts for 907Ks, and I told him that's my favorite car. And one thing led to another, and he supplied all kinds of help and pieces and parts and factory blueprints. And so I had just completed a 910 continuation car and went through the whole process of reverse engineering all the suspension pieces, all the parts for the car. And I had met Carl Thompson, who had bought the Vasek Polak collection of Porsche racing parts. And Carl was very kind to help me, and he sold us basically all the parts for the suspension and steering of a 907K. And so all of that was reverse engineered for the 910 project, and the 910 and 907K have the same suspension pieces, different steering rack with the same suspension pieces. And so with the help of Carl Thompson and Dale Miller, I was able to begin construction of the first 907K. My friend Neil Johnson, whose name is on the car for sale, he contacted me after he read the Excellence magazine article on my first 910 continuation, and he saw a photo of 907 bodywork hung up in my living room. It was temporarily there for artwork while I constructed the frame. And he contacted me, we met, became friends, and he insisted he had to have a 907K, and that was his dream car, just like mine. So I approached Dale Miller and I pleaded with him to sell us another set of bodywork, and he agreed. And so the next thing we knew, I had a big project where I took over part of Neil Johnson's fabrication shop in Hayward, and I constructed both cars side by side. Many of the photos that are posted show that construction process there at that shop. So the car that you're bidding on is identical to the cars that crossed the finish line at Le Mans. It's built with all the same components to the same exact specifications. And we hope that whoever gets it, whoever buys it, races it in vintage racing. And because we have the parts, we're here to support you with spares. So we hope that the car goes on to compete as Jason races our 907K, which is the only other continuation car that was made. And we want to see the same thing happen to this. Neil would have wanted to see the car race also. So in the process of obtaining new old stock rare parts like 917, 907 steering rack, I had to reverse engineer everything, all the pieces, and I ended up supplying parts around the world to people who needed spares. And so here's an example, 917, the last new old stock steering rack that Carl Thompson had. Here's an identical replica made out of the same materials, titanium and magnesium. We also had to reverse engineer critical components like the suspension hubs. These are made exactly as original. They're identical replacement parts. So you can go to the museum or take one of these to any of the cars racing in Europe, and the part is an identical drop-in copy for the real thing, the originals. In fact, the entire car, all elements, titanium ball joints, all the suspension pieces, hollow titanium bolts, fittings. One of the big challenges, the hollow magnesium castings that are the upright castings. These are featherweight, very, very light. They're hollow, very difficult. Had to make tooling by reverse engineering the original new old stock parts and CNC machine tooling. And then we have a company that makes the castings in the original magnesium material. So we now supply spare parts to anybody who needs them around the world. These are all interchangeable with the originals, and that's what makes the car special. The 907K that's for sale has all the correct parts on it. Nothing on it is off the shelf. It's all special parts that are very, very rare and limited, that were copies of the very last pieces available. To the best of my knowledge, the 907K that you're bidding on will be the very last new and correct 907K available. ever, unless Porsche decides to retool all the tooling to make all these parts.